All right, good morning, everybody. What is this? Thursday morning. And have you thought about having your car in the year 2030? You go, what, James? 2030, 2020 is not even here yet. I agree, 2020 is not here. Who had ever thought 2020, is right around the corner? But they say by the year 2030, I want to make sure I say this right. This is to business. I want to make sure I'm telling you for Business Insider. This is something we've been talking about on the show a little bit lately, and it has to do with the fact that, car ownership is going to be something, it's going away. 95% of the cars today 95% of the time cars are sitting parked. 95% of the time, that's what they're saying. They're also saying by the year 2030, parking, believe it or not, is going to be something that's going to be obsolete. There won't be any reason for parking because there's going to be a lot less cars. If I understand correctly, what they're predicting is I want to make sure I get the numbers right, because only 20% of Americans will own a car in 15 more years. That means only 2 out of 10 people that you see will own a personal car. How many people do you know right now? Out of 10 people you know, how many don't have a car? I venture to say just about everyone you know that's of driving age has a car. If they don't have a car, either they're too young to have a car, or maybe they've given up driving because they've gotten too old. Because Florida is God's waiting room. It really is. And that happens. As our parents get older, they stop driving. And a lot of times they voluntarily give up the keys, and sometimes they don't. And that's another show all by itself. But only 20% of Americans will own a car in 15 years. And what I'm worrying about is the future of the automobile industry. I mean, where it's going. Ford has announced that they're not going to be making passenger cars in the next few years. So if they're not going to be making passenger cars, what are they going to be making on? We're going to be concentrating on trucks and things like that. Well, I've got my special guest caller calling in. We're going to talk about this. I got Frank Sundram calling. Good morning, Frank. How are we doing this morning, sir?
Good morning. I am trying to grow webbed feet as fast as I can.
Webbed feet? Why is that? Is it raining out there yet where you're living?
Well, it is not. We are going to have some rain this weekend, so I'm trying to prepare. I'm trying to spur the evolutionary process on.
Well, they tell me down in South Florida it's been so wet lately. The lakes have never been, well, I shouldn't say never. It's been a long time since the lakes down there have been as full as they are. And my daughters live down there, and I said, well, then send some of the rain our way. Apparently they took me seriously, and they're sending it our way. So I'm glad we're getting some rain. We need some rain here, believe it or not. We do.
Well, you've always complained your kids never listened to you, and now they did.
Oh, yeah, got me there. But, Frank, we were talking about, this is something right up your alley here, the future of the personal automobile. When you and I were growing up, when we were 16 years old, we couldn't wait to get our car, right? Get a driver's license. Get a car. Okay. They're saying by the year 2030, 2 out of every 10 people will be the only ones that will own a car. So 20% of Americans will be the only owners of personal cars. That's quite a big drop in personal car ownership. Do you see that happening?
I don't, simply because that may happen in the cities, and in a sense, it has already happened in New York City, for instance, where 8.5 to 10 million people now live and around there. Very few people own cars because you've got public transit.
Yeah. Well, that is true. Yeah. Go ahead.
That would work fine in a place like Belgium, France, Monaco. By the way, Grand Prix this weekend. Everybody needs to be in front of their television watching the race this weekend. But what about the people who live in small towns around? Can somebody in Mariana or somebody in Weaver Hitchcock get along without a car when the grocery store is not necessarily around the corner?
I don't see that happening. Yeah, I don't either. Yeah.
And that's the thing. And there's no way in this country, given the political situation, anybody's going to invest a dime in something practical like mass transit that's actually practical.
Well, speaking of mass transit, I don't know of any mass transit system that is 100% pays for itself, whether it be trains, planes, or automobiles. They all seem to be getting some sort of subsidy to keep their doors open. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'm not, but I'm just saying when the government gets involved, you know how I feel about that. It seems to make things more expensive and less efficient. But the point I'm trying to say is about car ownership. I can't imagine Americans kids especially, millennials or whatever you want to call them by the year 2030, not having a personal car. I mean, it just seems unimaginable. You not wanting to have your own personal car.
I think there will be some form of personal transportation, or maybe some carpooling or something, which I'm seeing an increasing amount of.
Right.
But I don't see them ever going away simply because of the size of and the expanse of this country. And you always have somebody somewhere who wants to grow bees up outside town is going to need a wheel.
Oh, no argument about that. Because one thing about America is we have a lot of freedoms that a lot of countries don't have. And they're talking about that right now there's 247 million cars on the road, registered cars on the road. That doesn't include the ones on blocks in your neighbor's backyard. That doesn't include those, but there's 247 million. But they're talking about them dropping down, America only having 44 million by 2030. That's a decrease of over 217 million cars on the road. That's a decrease in revenue from taxes, of road taxes, car taxes. You're talking about a completely revolutionizing. I just don't see that happening. I do not see that happening in 15 years. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Cars, James, to you and I, cars were instruments of dreams.
Yes, they still are.
They could take us places. They could take us to parties. They could take us all over the place. And cars have become more like appliances to the younger generation, and they've become so darn reliable and that people look at them very, very differently. I mean, the romance of the car, unfortunately, pretty much sticks with our generation.
Maybe you're right.
And if you've been watching what's been happening at car auctions, the cars of the 50s that just very recently were selling in the hundreds of thousands of dollars has just dropped. The market has just dropped because that generation to whom they were dream cars has just gone away.
Maybe that's what it is, that the love affair of having personal freedom and having hopes and dreams has all been. Are you trying to? Maybe the love affair of personal freedoms are gone because I got millennials out there that are saying, we take away our freedoms, give us more restrictions, give us a police state, make us go through school, metal, we won't be shot at. I'm sitting there going, I'm just not used to it. The idea of giving away any freedom for security just makes me just like go, wow. I just can't, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe people want security, but they're saying that families could save up to almost $6,000 a year and having a car. That's how much it just maintains a car just to drive one. I think it's higher than that, but I just do not see this happening. I do not see in 15 years people not having cars. I just don't see it.
Well, I have a friend of mine who's French, and she lives in Chicago now, but when she first came here, she was all about cars. She was just raving about the fact that she could have a car in America and she could go wherever she wanted, and she did. Now, if she needs a car, she goes down to the corner, and she's got a subscription-based car service.
Uber,
And she just she just rents a car. And she rents a car by the hour, by the day, and goes wherever she wants to go and comes back to me. That's plain nuts because I always have to have a car that is capable of taking me from here to New Mexico or Illinois or New York at the drop of a hat. I can't get my head around that aspect of it.
I can't. Okay, I want to read some more. They say private car ownership will drop by 80% by year 2030. Using electric ride shares will be 4 to 10 times cheaper per mile than buying a new car by 2021. I'm going, whoa. Global oil demand will peak at 100 million barrels of oil by 2020, but will decrease to 70 million per day by 2030. Those numbers just don't seem to match up for the amount of. It sounds like third world, other countries are going to be increasing personal ownership, where America is going to be dropping ownership, because if you're only decreasing oil production by 30 million barrels a day, and you're dropping car ownership by 217 million cars a year, I just don't see the numbers matching up that part right there. It just seems like a lot of other countries are going to be having personal cars, such as maybe India. Maybe that's going, because that's a fast-growing economy over in India. Middle class is affluent.
But a lot of countries look at America and look at those dreams, and they see the movies. Okay, much like when I was a kid and I saw the movies about America from India. But also in a lot of those countries, you have a far better rail system and a bus system than you do now.
Well,
right?
I guess so. I don't know.
The cultures are very, very different. I mean, I had a friend of mine in Philadelphia. He started driving when he was 22. And I remember taking a ride with him, and I did not think I would make it, past the ride, because he was not just, the car culture was not ingrained in him, nor was traffic culture, nor was having to pick out street lights and traffic lights amidst all the other signs and lights that he had. But as a trend, it's very likely that you and I are keepers of a flame that's going out. Because you and I drove for fun, we drove for pleasure, we drove for all kinds of reasons. I mean, to me, there's still no greater joy than taking a road trip.
Oh, still. Yes, I agree. I mean, I know people that just every Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, they get, hey, the dog, someone's at the door. They all take off for a trip. They all do. They love a road trip out of town, maybe if it's only 50 miles, but they love that. And I guess we're just going to have to change our mentality if this is going to be the case, especially when you live in cities.
Well, remember, ideas ideas come from cities. Revolutions come from the countryside. So that's it's two very different things.
Ideas come from the city, but revolutions come from the countryside.
Yes, I didn't. It's always a pushback.
I never thought about it that way, but I guess I remember during the Revolutionary War, before we had one, only 3% of the Americans were for seceding from England at one time. Only 3%, and that 3% grew quite quickly. So maybe that's what you're talking about. The revolutions come from the cities, but the countryside is what really makes things happen. Maybe we'll see more. I don't know. My wife says she doesn't see it happening. The cars of the future happening where we don't have cars, but who knows? We just don't know what's going to happen. But Frank, I was going to ask you. Go ahead, sir.
I have a thought, James. You are sitting on the cusp of the revolution with your bee colony in the countryside. Teach your bees how to drive. And then
wouldn't that be nice?
And then have your grandchildren make little cars using their 3D printers for the bees.
Frank, you're always thinking outside the box. You really are. Frank, we got to go. We're up against the clock on that one. I like that one. I got to figure that one out here. I got Rob Lapham coming on. Frank, I thank you so much for being on here, and we'll be back and talk to you Monday again, Frank. Give us a call Monday morning around 6 o'clock. All right, we'll talk to you then. All right, this is James Morris. We'll be right back with... Summer is here and the days are getting longer and hotter. Call James Auto Center for a free cooling system evaluation and consultation. Give us a call, 850-763-0555 today.
Part of what I'd like to let you know is what we do and how we work our system. Basically, we've got about 700 stocking dealers scattered around the 15 counties here in the Big Bend area of the state. I run a fleet of trucks, vans, and what we call hotshot vehicles to deliver to our dealers quickly so they can help service you as fast and efficiently as they can. Provide timely and efficient service, and we're there to take care of our dealers who in turn can take care of their customers.
If you want the best deal in town for tires, you need to call Baytown Tires at 873-8900.
Hanson and the guys at Baytown Tires take pride in serving Panama City for over 20 years. Baytown Tires on Highway 98 in St. Andrews. All service work backed by a nationwide warranty.
All right, welcome back. We had a great little show this morning with Frank over there talking about the future of automobile personal ownership. They're saying in 15 years, 80% of Americans will not have a personal car. I find that hard to believe, but who knows? I'm also in the car repair industry, and I don't want to see that happen. But I've got Rob Lapham calling all the way from Port St. Joe. It's historic Port St. Joe. I shouldn't say Port St. Joe. Panama City. Where are you at? Mexico Beach? I can't remember where you're at. I forget. Rob, are you there?
I'm hiding. I'm hiding in the county between the city of Port St. Joe and Mexico.
That's where it is. Yes,
but I'm here.
You're now, Rob. I know you keep up what's going on. We've been talking about transportation and driving, and I've been reading lately that a lot of veterans are complaining that instead of them being able to get local care in Panama City, they have to figure out how to get to Pensacola or Biloxi or Jacksonville. What were you going to say, Anna Marie?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit, if you're going to talk about veterans and hospital care. And
yes, I am.
What I'm finding out, or we talked with a nurse yesterday that has worked for several VA facilities, the veterans that have the medical choice, they can go to their local. What happens is when all the money is spent, then they still send them back to a VA hospital. So if it's, you hear what I'm saying? If the benefits, once all the benefits are used up for that veteran in the local hospital or local doctors, then he'll be sent to or referred to a VA facility.
Well, what if they? That's what I'm trying to ask. You know, what if it has to be 100 miles away?
It doesn't matter. I'm just telling you what's going down.
Biloxi's a long drive away.
Because we all thought that veterans' medical choice would be a great thing.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, that's how they turned it around.
Do you know anything about this, Rob? Veterans' choice? I don't know. If
I know that it's a typical case of your federal government at work. The law, as passed, stated that if you live 40 miles or more from a VA facility, you are not required to use the facility. You may use your local doctor.
Right. Yes.
That's the law. The appropriation, the funding for it, is a separate vehicle. And as I said, it's your federal government at work. Doesn't matter if you live 1,000 miles away. Well, I guess you don't live 1,000 miles away, but if you, it doesn't matter how far away you live. I understand what Anna Marie is saying. I did not know about that that particular piece of news, but it doesn't surprise me, James. It is it's just another case of left hand, right hand, no coordination, and Congress really ought to jump right on this. It's the House of Representatives' responsibility to initiate money bills on the item, and the president can request it. I'm surprised he hasn't, but
I am.
Ought to jump right on it and provide more funding. Furthermore, you ought not to be penalizing a veteran who happens to live 39 miles away from the VA hospital. I would say every year the 40-mile distance ought to reduce from 40 to 30 to 20 to 10. Eventually, there ought to be no requirement to live a certain distance away from a VA hospital. If you are a veteran and you're entitled to services, you ought to be able to get them in the private sector if you don't like the VA. And over a period of time, the VA should then shrink. And of course, that's a word that's anathema to
it doesn't happen. It doesn't. Yeah, it gets bigger and bigger, and they get less and less services for our veterans. I mean, I see this.
If they can't, if they can't do the job, if the veterans don't think they can do the job, then they ought not to be in business. And you can't, do that overnight. But it really is disgusting that we are not funding our veterans adequately for the private care when the law provides that they are entitled to it.
Well, the reason I'm bringing this forward is, or asking about, I was reading an article. If people would go at Business Insider, just Google the future of personal automobiles in America. They're saying in the next 15 years, and by 2030, less than 15 years, that there will be only 20% of Americans will own a personal car. That means only 20% of the Americans will have a driver's license or be paying car insurance or paying road taxes and gasoline. And they're saying we're going to all go to a ride-hailing services. And I'm sitting there going, maybe that, like Frank Sundram was on a minute ago, maybe that might work in New York City or Tallahassee or Orlando. But will that work in Weewa? Will that work in Mexico Beach? These are the questions inquiring minds want to know. How's Uber going to work in Weewa? When you want to go across town to visit a friend. I mean, I just do not see rural America giving up their cars. And most of America is rural, if I'm not mistaken. You know, I just can't. I mean, just my idea, and that's why I'm saying veterans who, you know, in 15 years, there's going to be a lot of veterans still out there. How are they going to get to Biloxi or Pensacola if they, you know, if there's no interest? You know, is it going to be ride sharing where where you're going to have to get in a van, you know, that comes by once every, you know, by Uber once a week? You get into it, you march out to Highway 231, stand in line, and it picks you up. I don't know, but these are just questions that where is the future of the automobile affects our lives every day. I mean, think about it. If we didn't have an automobile, you and I would be completely different lifestyles. We wouldn't even know each other if it wasn't through an automobile, literally. So how is that going to go away as far as the future of people having the freedom to travel?
A couple of thoughts.
Okay.
First of all, if you look at, and you did reference New York, so if you look at Manhattan today, it would not surprise me at all that for those people who live in Manhattan, maybe only 20% of them today actually have their own car.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time, like 1971 since I lived in Manhattan. But even then, you didn't have a car. You grabbed a cab or jumped on the subway.
Right.
You grabbed a bus. It just cost prohibitive, and you can't find a parking space unless you want to pay several $100s a month, underground, whatever. So, and the system works just fine. In other words, there is enough private and public transportation to take care of people's moving around needs. As far as WeWa is concerned, and I'm sure the folks in WeWa are glad to, my heavens, they're in the news now for some reason because you don't usually hear WeWa or anything. So what will happen in 2030, I will conjecture, is that there will be a half a dozen Uber-type vehicles sitting around, the self-driving ones, and whenever anybody calls for a lift from A to B, or maybe I'm just living a mile out of town and I want my Uber to take me to Family Dollar or the IGA store or Dollar General, then I'll call and I'll get that ride to and from. And if I don't need a car, and some people will still have cars, but if I don't need one, don't want to be bothered with the upkeep and so forth, these Uber, they will be self-drive vehicles. So you don't have the labor cost associated with that fleet of, I use Uber generically because it'll be a different name. On the other hand, rural America is not really what the article was speaking about when the representation 20% of Americans. Obviously, in rural America, there will be more private vehicles. But I can see it happening. But James, the thing that I'm pleased about as an old person is I don't have to worry about what happens in 2030.
Oh, I wasn't going there. As an old person, listen to you, Rob, that people are living longer and longer every day. I would not be surprised if you lived over 100 years old. You may not want to, but I don't. I'm not
you have referenced one of my all-time favorite images and person I admired most, and that was George Burns when he was over 100, smoking that damn big cigar of his, happier and stink. And he's gone now, but it just shows you can live to over 100 without being, non-ambulatory, being pushed around in a wheelchair or dribbling in the mouth, all that sort of thing. Certainly we are all getting older, and we're paying for it. The medical community is growing by leaps and bounds. I guess that's a good place to get a job, just because of the increased number of people who need medical services these days.
Right now, speaking of medical services, we're dealing with in our family with a veteran who's going through cancer treatment. And one of the things we've talked about after the cancer treatment is over is going on cannabis, raw cannabis and everything. And it's legal in Florida to get it, but the problem is there's no doctors in this area that were willing to step out and prescribe it because of all the... we've had one doctor that did it, and she's not here anymore. They took away her license, and that's what I'm worried about, or what I think doctors are worried about, is they're afraid they can't do that because of they'll lose their license. And I can't say that I blame it. And we may end up becoming refugees from Florida and moving to Colorado or someplace where medical cannabis of special kind is allowed. Or is available, not allowed. It's allowed here in Florida. It's just not prescribed. That's what I'm trying to say. So that's the thing there.
Well, thank goodness. I think the Drug Enforcement Agency has its hands full with trying to stop illicit drugs from coming into the country. And if you're running a truck from Denver to Panama City, with cannabis in it, you probably get away with it because you're not following the path of south to north. You're going across the country. So there's a business idea for folks who want to get involved in. Well,
what was I read yesterday? I read yesterday there was in 100-degree temperature going on Interstate 10. I think it was Interstate 10. They found 87 people crammed in the back of a semi truck. 87 people.
No, that's criminal.
And it is. Yeah. It is criminal. They were here illegally, but the thing is, these people were so desperate to get here to the land of milk and honey. That's what I call America. It's a great country.
Yeah.
I just wish I just wish there was a way that we could get everybody on the same page as far as reality and what people want. I know we got a lot of people here illegally, but let's figure out a way to document them, to put them to work, and to collect taxes. Because as much as I hate taxes, there's a lot of people that are working under the table that work against my industry. I got people that are working on cars in their backyard that don't speak any English. They may speak, I don't know what they may speak Norwegian, I don't know. But the point being is they work under the table. There's a strong underground economy out there from people that do not want to report their income. And I'm not just saying it's immigrants, it's Americans as well. They just don't report their income because their own, they get subsidized from the government not to work or because they're unemployable or whatever the case may be. But that's another show in itself. We got about another minute and a half here, Rob. What's on your mind this morning? We've talked about everything on my mind, but what's on your mind?
Well, I've been laughing since Tuesday when the president announced that there would be a meeting today and he'd have General Kelly set it up between Devin Nunes and Kurt Gowdy, the chairman of those two Republican congressional committees, and Dan Coates, the DNI Director of National Intelligence, and Chris Wray, the FBI Director, and then Deputy AG Rosenstein are going to have someone sit in for him. But they are going to show these two congressmen the actual letters, unredacted. This stuff has been argued about forever. And what caught my eye yesterday is Chuck Schumer standing on the floor of the Senate saying, "Oh, this is terrible," and I'm laughing because the Democrats, including principally who's the number 2 guy on Nunes committee? Adam Schiff, California congressman, lies all the time, leaks all the time. And they're all upset because they haven't been invited to this meeting, which is happening today, and they're not going to get in. What DOJ has done is they're setting up a second meeting for the Gang of 8, which includes 4 Democrats, and they're going to brief them on the Russia probe. But I don't think they're going to get the same information as Nunes and Gowdy are going to get. So I'm pleased that our president has, it's a chess move, and basically he checkmate there. He has, the guy is not the most articulate guy in the world, but he is sharp. I really, every day, get more impressed with President Trump. So I guess that's my thought for my 1 minute.
Hey, you did great on that. It is interesting times, let's put it this way, and it is exciting times. I'm going to find out, you and I are going to find a lot of things are going to change real quick in the next few years, I believe. And I think a lot of things for the better.
Yep.
And I'm hoping more people buy more cars. I really am. All right, on that note, I got to go.
James.
All right, I'm not worried about it. You be good, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much, Rob. We'll talk to you later now. Bye-bye, everybody.
Sure.
Summer is here and the days are getting longer and hotter. Call James Auto Center for a free cooling system evaluation and consultation. Give us a call, 850-763-0555 today.
Guarantee, beep, 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 yeah!